All right, welcome guys. First Shop Owner Roundtable of 2023. Thanks for being here. Before we get started, a quick plug for the slide you saw earlier. We'll be hosting the Diesel Connect Industry Conference here in Phoenix in June. So if you haven't had a chance yet to register, we would definitely encourage you to go to the website and check it out. And hopefully we'll see you here in Phoenix in June. Our standard disclaimer, so we're going to offer a lot of input for you and hopefully provide some great information about how one of our fantastic customers runs their shop and sees the industry. But please keep in mind, we're not offering any legal or tax advice. Make sure you consult your own advisors to know about your own personal situation. And with that, we'll get started. So as usual, Chris O'Brien, Chief Operating Officer of Fullbay, is joining me. Then we have our friends and customers, Chase and Dale Bowman from AM/PM Diesel. So welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
All right. So before we get into it, maybe we can get a quick overview of AM/PM Diesel Services. Tell everybody a little bit about the company, where you've come from, and what you're doing today.
Go ahead, Chase. I'll let you take it.
You start the business so you can let's do the initial story.
So we started AM/PM Diesel Services in 2009. And at the beginning, it was called AM/PM Truck Services. And then we decided in 2012 to switch the name to AM/PM Diesel Services. It started off as a mobile fleet truck. I actually bought an old Snap-on tool truck, 24-foot box truck. And I was working at a company called Bright Truck Leasing, and it was a leasing company. And one thing that I was seeing working for the leasing company is going to customers' facilities and looking at the fees that they were paying just to have a leasing company do their guaranteed maintenance. Basically, it was $800 a month per piece of equipment to have an 800 number to call a vendor to go out and do repairs. So when I started seeing the little niche that we had in the market, I built the 24-foot box truck. We done something really different with it. We put all the oil containment up underneath the truck so you couldn't see it under the skirts. And then inside the truck is where we had all of our filters. We could actually go out to a customer's facility and do 20 oil changes, and the truck never leave the parking lot. So a customer would call us and say, hey, on Friday, we got these 20 trucks that need to be done. On Monday, the trucks was there. They didn't have to hike any trucks back and forth, have drivers take equipment to the dealership and drop it off and pick it up. So it made it really convenient for them, and we got to expedite the repairs by doing so, by doing it on site, by the volume. You know, customers in the past, they would have to have a driver drive a truck to a dealership or a shop, drop it off, pick them up, bring them back, do the next truck, back and forth, back and forth. So we done away with that. They'd get to work on Monday morning, 4 o'clock a.m., start the truck, and they would take off. When we started AM/PM, before we even had the truck built, we had a demand, and we actually had customers calling us wanting to schedule work. We'd have people call us, hey, you get your truck together yet? No, we don't have it together yet. Okay, call us as soon as you get it done. I think our first week in business, it was amazing. I think we done $6,500. The very first week, and that was profit.
And all services, like oil services?
Just oil services is all we was doing. And then we kicked it up into road calls and doing heavier work. And basically we got our own shop. And then, we just continue to grow and grow and grow. Chase, he basically took over the business in 2017.
Right.
And he's been running operations ever since. He just calls me for advice, and I give him, the
advice I want to hear or not hear. Right.
Yeah. So that's kind of like how we kicked off AM/PM. And now we're in how many different states?
I think we're in 7 different states. Like right now we have 18 shops across the U.S. It's a lot of fun. A lot of intricacies with different states and taxes and all that, but it's a lot of fun. We can piggyback off the other mechanics we have out in the shops. As the work changes, we can ship our mechanics around. So it's a really good dynamic for us to have multiple shops and to kind of piggyback off each other and parts availability. We went through that huge shortage of parts in like 2020 and 2021, even part of this past year. And so having those other shops, you have this extra part, they send it to me. So it's trying to mitigate that risk as much as we could. So.
And how many technicians do you have across all the shops?
I think right now we have probably about 47 to 50. The number changes often. We're always hiring and replacing some of the other mechanics as skill sets changing. And we're recruiting just about every single day. We have an in-house recruiter. Each day we're interviewing 5 to 10 mechanics. But like everybody knows, definitely in our industry, it's really hard to find good quality mechanics. A lot of people say they can do mechanical work, but then you put them to work and they don't have the experience. And with our customer being large fleets, we can't have somebody that's super green with us, right? We need some more qualified. But we're changing that dynamic as we have more mechanics. We're sending more of our greener mechanics with our lead techs and getting them trained up. They'll stay with them for 4 to 6 weeks, and then they'll do a skill assessment to see if all that training is paying off. Then we get that feedback and see if he needs to go through training or is it a replacement thing. Do we need to find another mechanic? But we don't have that much high turnover anymore for implementing all that training protocols. Usually all our mechanics stay with us for a really long time or have been with us over 10 years.
Wow. And you must have a good compensation package as well to help complement that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you believe in like a flat rate or a variable? How do you do it? Do you bonus system?
So it's a little bit of both. Depending upon the market, like in West Texas, everybody knows really expensive, so that one's ran a little bit differently. But generally speaking, all of our mechanics are paid off at flag time. So for instance, a brake job is about 6 to 8 hours. The mechanic should get that done in about 2 hours. He gets paid the 6 hours, and then he can move on to the next job. Really high skilled mechanics can make over $150,000 a year, and plus there's bonus packages with that depending upon the market. If they hit a certain threshold, they'll get a weekly stipend from that. Plus to the per diem if they're a traveling mechanic. Field mechanics make the most because they're the ones going all over the place versus somebody that's staying at one physical shop. But we pay off of efficiency of the mechanic and then also that quality. Quality is paramount. And we only work on large fleets, not your 1 and 2 trucks. And so they always have that guaranteed work. As long as your quality's there and you're being efficient with your time, not just talking to everybody, you're actually getting your job done, you won't have those issues.
That's interesting. So just to be clear, you're not paying them a flat hourly rate. It's
Nope.
based on the job, and if they can get that job done more quickly,
Right.
with high quality,
right.
they can make
and it's
more
based
money.
upon the customer's labor rate. Some of our customers are really high, some are a little bit lower, but it's based upon the specific customer's labor rate. They get a percentage or that flat rate from that labor time.
How does that work? What kind of steps do you take when you think about quality? Right, you mentioned quality, and you can't just have them do things quickly. They have to have high quality.
Right.
What are some of the steps that you take to make sure that you're getting that quality?
So we have our lead techs at all of my shops and also the service manager overseeing the work. It's not every job that we inspect, like a light repair. We're not going to go out there and look at it. But we'll handpick certain jobs and go out there, put eyes on and verify it was to the compliance standpoint we needed to be at. We have very little warranty comeback work through this going through that process. But it's always about that service manager or that lead tech being out in the shop and not sitting in his office. You need to be out there looking at the equipment and see what's going on with it. And talking with the customers consistently.
So the rule of thumb on quality is all the technicians, especially the senior technicians, we have an understanding with them. If they have a comeback would be something that they repaired and it was not repaired properly. What we do is we give them the option to do the repair over and to be overseen by another technician. They have to do the labor for free, and then we provide them with the parts to do the repair. And so if they have something that they mess up, it's hurting their pocket as bad as it's hurting ours. Now, if it's something that they come back and said, hey, we don't know what we've done wrong, but it's obvious there was a failure, we'll tell them, hey, we're going to have another technician redo the job. Basically, we're going to take that amount of money for him that you got paid for that job. Now he's getting paid for the job. We're providing the parts, but that's kind of, I wouldn't say it's discipline to the technician, but if you have a job that you did and it's a 15, 16-hour job and you're having to lose that money,
redo it.
It's kind of like, hey, I want to make sure I don't do this. And usually if we have another senior technician watch over the repair, they learn from their mistake and it doesn't happen again.
Yeah. It seems like most of us would want to do it ourselves. Like, hey, yeah, take a look. Give me someone over my shoulder. I'll get this done and make it right. And I would imagine most people are taking that path. And I guess it's accountability more than discipline. You know what you're getting into. And if the incentive plan is to go too fast, it's just going to cost you anyway.
Exactly.
So make sure the quality,
The speed will come. As you do certain repairs consistently, that
Right.
speed, that will come with time. It's not come out of the gate. Don't rush the job, because you will have, a comeback on you.
So one of the things I think that happens with a lot of shops when we go to a lot of different areas in the United States is you'll have areas that basically the general mechanic field is all flat rate. Nobody works hourly. And then you go to another part of the country, like up on the East Coast, everybody wants to get paid hourly. So when you come down to the pay and you start talking to them, this technician says, I can make $42.50 an hour working at a dealership. Why would I come to work for you? And then you have to explain to them that working commission, when you're working in the customer's parking lot in their shops, basically the work is abundant. You can do as much as you want to. It's never ending. When you're working at a dealership for $42 an hour, it's simple to do the math. 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, time and a half. The technicians that we have that work for us, if you would actually call them on the phone and say, hey, I would like for you to come work for me, what would it take? I've actually got technicians that would tell you $145 an hour for me to come to work for you, because that's what they would be passing up. They're good technicians, but when I speak to a lot of shop owners and stuff, they're like, my guys won't work commission because you've never explained it to them the right way. If you got the workload, commission is always better. If you don't have the workload, like when we first open up a shop in a different location, what we will do is we'll give our technician a guarantee.
Okay.
So basically we'll say, hey, we're kicking this off. It's a new location. For the next 2 months, we're going to give you X amount of money guaranteed. If you don't make that, we're going to offset it to make you make that. But we will see in 3 months, and you will see that, the profit margins are there. The guarantee will go away, and then you start working, completely on commission.
Right. Then we increase the percentage of that. We go to any customer shop knowing how many pieces of equipment are there, about how many mechanics we need to service that equipment. So we know that not to overstaff that shop. We do just enough so we know the mechanic will always have an excess of 40 hours. If the work did get slow or something happened, at minimum, they'll get their guarantee of 40 to just protect them. Work does sometimes come in waves, but generally speaking, if you look on the average of a quarter, you're always making an excess of 40 hours.
Yeah.
The mechanic's really not getting 60 hours plus in billables. There's a problem with a mechanic or parts. There's some other issue going on because, again, this is guaranteed work. There's always something to do. Definitely on the preventive maintenance side, there's scheduled maintenance that can be done, not just your standard repairs.
And so if I go to a location and say we got 10 mechanics working at that location and every mechanic is only getting 60 hours, I usually call Chase and say, hey, we got too many mechanics here. Let's go ahead and pull 2 of these mechanics and send them over here. And then the technicians are there, their hours go up to 75. So they stay busy making a good paycheck.
And they're happy making that money because, and they're beating the clock too, right? So I still am running book time. You give me 8, I get it done in 6. I'm getting paid based on efficiency.
Right.
So the more efficient I am at doing it, I'm making money. The more work I do, I make even more money.
Right. And our mechanics are pretty open. They tell us, hey, we need help. They'll say, hey, we're falling behind. Or I'll ask them, hey, I'm about to send somebody else. No, don't send anybody. This is what I have going on. I'll get this stuff done.
Yeah, they're like, we're only been working a half a day on Saturday. We'll work all day. Don't send us another mechanic because we want the money.
That's funny. That's how we used to do it. Like when we were driving, you paid us by the load. Yeah, no. I'll go help Chase and Dale. Yeah. I'll go unload that truck with them. Exactly. We got it. Don't send another guy.
So one of the smartest people I met in business that I think has really helped me, and if people would take this in, you got to have a head count on your equipment. When I say a head count on equipment, when we go in and we meet with a customer and we ask, how many trucks do you got? We write it down. How many trailers do you got? The basic rule of thumb that you got to have is for every 23 pieces of equipment, and this is in Class 8 equipment, you got to have 1 technician. So if a customer has 230 pieces of equipment, that tells us we need 10 technicians. The 10 technicians can handle that fleet completely from start to finish, all the way from tires, brakes, changes, oil changes, road calls, welding, fabrication. We usually put a mix in there with it. And by doing that head count, when we first kicked off our first out-of-state location, we ran into a situation. We had a customer come to us and say, hey, we want you guys to take over this location. And it's all brand new equipment. We don't think it's going to be a lot. Probably going to need 2 technicians. We got up there. They had 40 trailers in a parking lot that had no brakes on them all the way down to the rivets.
Oh, geez.
We had trucks that were falling apart. They were brand new. They had bought them, and they was a year old and had no maintenance done on them.
Oh, that's the worst.
The next week that we went up there, I think we had 14 technicians on planes flying out of state to go up there just to get it up to DOT.
Right, right.
So, I mean, the formula that we have came up with and tried and true is 23-to-1. So when you're meeting with a customer and they tell you, hey, we got, 23 pieces of equipment, one mechanic should be able to handle that fleet.
And you said something there that I don't know that everybody, who's listening to this is really understands the gravity of what, because we were at dinner last night and Chase was explaining some stuff and started bringing back some days, back when I was running fleet and had the Rolodex of vendors and all that. But you guys have done a really great job of making it simple for a customer. So if I was your customer back in the day, I just call you. You solve my tire issues. You solve my welding. Like I got an ICC bumper. You got it all. So when you're managing that fleet and you're looking at that tech count and covering those things, that's everything. Soup to nuts. Sublets, whatever, you handle it, right?
Right.
Turnkey. That's what we call it.
Bumper to bumper, cover it all, and we get full visibility with it, and leveraging that for all the customers.
So I've had customers come out, and I mean, when we interview with them, they have a tire vendor that they like a lot, and then they've got a welding company that comes out and does welding. They like them a lot, and we go in and we say, hey, we can do this, and sometimes we'll go in and we'll actually hire their vendors that work for us.
Okay.
We manage it for them.
Yep.
It's still their vendor. The difference is we're paying the bill for them.
And negotiating it, constantly negotiating all the rates.
Yep. Yep.
And the other thing is, I think that when I go to locations sometimes, I do, I go to a lot of truck shows and stuff, and I get to meet a lot of people. We have a huge leasing company that's one of our customers that we do a lot of road calls and stuff for. And one thing that we do is when we do purchasing, we don't go in like we're a small guy.
Right.
We go in like we're the big guy.
Right.
I mean, if we buy a skid of brakes, what's our price margin?
Right.
If we buy skids of brake drums, and then what we get to do is we get to offset the cost difference to the customer in savings.
Okay.
Because we're buying in bulk, just like the big guys.
Got it.
So, I mean, that's something for shops to, to look into.
So you're taking some of the margin in some cases, but if it gets the contract in line, secures the business for that deal or makes it right, you'll pass on some of that bulk purchase, leverage the money, and pass some of that on to the customer?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. That's usually part of our contract. There's certain KPIs that we have to exceed every quarter. What has AMPM done to benefit the fleet? And where is those cost savings coming from? Obviously, we don't pass on all the savings, right? Yeah. But along with stay within the KPIs, and we're constantly seeing improvements, the customer's usually really happy.
I think that and sorry to keep going because it's the intro, but it's fascinating because a lot of people ask us, how do you do what they do? What's the recipe? What's the formula? Can someone just tell me how to do it or teach me how to do it? And there's always this overarching thing where you're putting together an agreement that's a win-win. You win, they win. And you were just touching on that. And it seems like that governance is almost key because otherwise it's just a bunch of transactions.
Exactly.
And then you win and I don't win, or do I actually win anything? You're creating a relationship in writing, legally, that says, here's what we're going to do. And I'm going to promise that I live up to the promise.
Right. On both sides. The customer also has their own KPIs that you have to uphold. It's the only way the partnership will work. We don't think about our customers being a vendor-customer relationship. It's all about being that partnership. Because at the end of the day, we are the one working on their equipment, keeping the trucks rolling, right? And so it's about them being completely transparent with us when the equipment's going to be coming in. Are they going to have an uptick in work? Do we need to plan for more mechanics? Having that transparency both from in the contract, but also just about how the equipment's performing. And then with using that and having those KPIs really holds both of us being really super accountable for it. And then there isn't a disagreement, we can refer back to the contract. And most of our contract we renegotiate once a year. And then we go back through our rates, go back through certain jobs we do regularly.
Labor time guides.
Labor time, to see if there is any price break we can give on that through that volume. Or is there a part that we can source a little bit cheaper and pass on? But we're continuously going through our inventory and to look at the velocity of our certain parts to see what is the low-hanging fruit that we can capture to see to lower some cost. What are our big ticket items? Is there a certain tire that we can use that's a little bit get better wear life? And for lights repairs and brakes, where can we go and source better parts from?
Quality control. I mean, we can look at, pigtails that you buy, whether a Trek light or if it's a Grote, that pigtail is one better than the other.
Yeah. You know it based on failure, right? That's exactly how you spec your equipment.
Yes. So, when we go in and we actually have a meeting with our customers, which is either quarterly or once a year, Chase is really good about it. He has the data.
Yeah.
And we can go in and say, hey, we was using these brakes, you were getting X amount of miles. This brake is $5 more than this brake, but the longevity of the brake, you're actually saving X at the end of the year. So we're stocking this. And sometimes we'll have customers tell us, hey, this is what we want to use, off of your data. And that's what we stock. We call the vendor up, and then we can negotiate rates because we can say, hey, we've been buying 3 different products. Now we're going to be buying this one product. So it's kind of neat.
If anybody's curious, we call it a repair and maintenance report. I just actually did one this past month for one of my customers. It's a very large report, but it's called a fleet cost per unit report. It's in Fullbay. I love that report. So much data and useful information on there that a lot of people, they overlook that report, but that tells you how your customer fleet is operating. Definitely if you're doing it full circle, right? If you manage that piece of equipment from start to finish, you have all that data regarding that equipment to see what are the type of failures we're having out in the field. Is it a driver error, driver damages? Like forklift operators, they tend to damage equipment quite regularly and very expensive repairs, but we're able to point that out to see why that's occurring. And doing some stop gaps in the system that flags the information moving forward. We start seeing a certain change, we can flag that within Fullbay to tell us when the error occurs. We're seeing a lot of customers, they're not isolating driver or employee damages or their failures. That is a big safety thing that they can go back to their HR or safety person to put them back, that driver or employee, back through that training. And say, hey, we're noticing this is a trend with you, and being transparent with them and giving the opportunity to rectify it, right? Get it corrected. Or it's a really costly damages or what the driver's doing, probably we should let them go if it's costing tens of thousands of dollars, right? But using that report, leveraging that and the parts, the certain labor items, what are we doing most often? Is there more drop downs within the system we need to add? If we're doing the repair constantly, let's do a time trial to see how long it's taking that certain repair. Because not all labor timers are available within Motor, Mitchell, or the Red Book. Not all of them are in there.
Especially in the oil field. We do a lot of
specialized equipment.
I guess I should have said this. We have, a few different divisions. We got our road call division. We got our shop division. We got our on-site division. We have our forklift division. We have a welding division.
All right.
So there's a bunch of different divisions, and each division basically has its own manager. It kind of runs that part of the business. So we can kind of not micromanage it, but we know what's going on with it.
That makes sense. And it's interesting. You were just saying you're looking at your contracts annually, but it's not necessarily just to increase prices. You're actually looking out for the customer to make the equipment go longer, ultimately lowering their cost of ownership on that asset or potentially giving them a savings. So coming to your customer with a discount or a different plan to help them most people don't do that. It's, hey, you saw the COVID rates now this.
Right.
It's not, oh, by the way, I offset it because you get a discount on X, or we're getting you better brakes, you'll be here less.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's always looking for cost savings, but we do have price increases. Every company does them, but this is where we're going up on, but this is where we can reduce it at. And we always give a reason why we are increasing. We're not going to say it's because COVID or because everybody's increasing prices. We increase rates because we want more training for our mechanics. Is something costing more money? Do I just send them to more schools? Do I buy more software? So there's a justification for that. And then the more education on specialized pieces of equipment or any type of training, it's going to benefit the customer long term because that's a faster repair, better turnaround time for their equipment. So we always justify that, and always being super transparent, right, with it. We want all of our customer we have for a very long time. Any new ones, I'm not trying to get rich off the first year or the first quarter. I want to keep them for 10, 20, 30 years, right, for the long haul. And then if I can lower their costs, that means they can buy more equipment. In return, I make more money because more equipment to work on.
And I think with us, what we do a little bit different than most truck shops do and what we're doing, or maintenance facilities, is we basically have our customer, we interview them as much as they interview us, and kind of like figure out their needs. And then sometimes when we onboard a customer, is what we call it, sometimes that process is a month, 2 months, 3 months process.
Oh, wow.
But we're not looking at, them bringing us equipment to our shop that we currently have. These are remote locations that we're opening up for them. And then, it takes some time to ramp up. But the other thing that we do, in the MSA is we usually do a very general labor time guide. So when truck B needs a brake job, they know what it's going to cost. Truck B should be the same price as truck C, D, E, all the way down the line. So once after we meet at the MSA, they know what their oil change is going to cost them. They know what their brake cost is going to cost them on brake repairs. I mean, you have damages and everything in there, but if our customer gets a oil change bill, that oil change bill will match throughout the whole fleet.
Right.
Yeah. If they get a brake job, it'll match. Now, there may be a difference where we didn't change a rotor. This one needed a rotor, but, each line item is broke down where it's X.
And Dale, it's interesting as you talk about that. Between the Q&A and the chat, there's a lot of questions around the flat rates. Can you just clarify for everybody, where specifically do you get the data to say each job takes X number of hours?
We use Mitchell 1 and Mulder. That is our...
So you have to use a couple. Like there's not one...
But also
we do the average between the two.
But also, if it's not within there, we also use historical data. We go back through and pull a report. What do we charge historically? And that'll be the rate if one's not available. So
like on forklifts and stuff like that, we work on different forklifts, Kalmar, Hondas, Yale, Heisters. On a lot of that, you can't go into a flat rate book and say, what is the flat rate? So what we do is we reach out to the OEM, the manufacturer, and say, can you send us your warranty time guides? The warranty time guides is basically what the dealership gets paid. If they change a starter on a Hyundai, it pays X. Then what we can do is we can load that information into our op codes in Fullbay.
Right.
And sometimes when we take on a new piece of equipment, we'll actually call over to Fullbay and say, hey, we got this equipment list. Can you guys upload this for us? If it's a huge data file, and then, we can go ahead and put the labor times on there. And then the other thing with the flat rate, the technicians will actually learn what the flat rates are from being repetitive doing those jobs. And then one thing that Chase does is if you go in and you type in a unit number to a truck, you can click on PM service and it'll populate the screen.
Oh, wow. You've got them all loaded in there.
Yeah.
We've been Fullbay for a long time. I know all that.
You know how to use the system.
So our technicians, when it comes to using Fullbay, a lot of times it's just click and paste, click and paste, click and paste, or click, drop.
Right.
And it all loads up in there. So, I mean, it's a little bit different.
Sound like you used Fullbay before.
But I can tell you right now that hourly shops, it's a struggle. And the reason why I say that, I work for Volvo Trucks in North America. I've worked for International. I've worked for Penske. I've worked for myself. Whenever it comes down time to do the percentage of pay for flat rate versus hourly, if you run a report in Fullbay and you're an hourly shop, look at your efficiency of your technician. If you got a technician that's 100% that's hourly, that's rare. Usually it's anywhere between 85 to 90 because you got guys taking coffee breaks, lunch breaks. If a job pays 8 hours, they're going to take 8 hours. The difference with a flat rate technician, he is going to work twice as much in the same amount of time. because
He's going
he's
to close
getting
out the orders. Yeah, he's going to close out the orders. You guarantee it's 8-hour job. He does it in 4. You're giving him 8 hours of pay.
Exactly.
Take another job, and that is flat rate, and the difference between hourly and flat rate.
Right. Yes, we have a joke with we got a few customers that's got nationwide shops, and one of the fleet managers, we'll go to location together, and we'll pull up at a dealership for a reason. They buy a part, go and do something, and we look at each other, and he'll say, "They're hourly," and I say, I ask him, "How do you know?" He says, "The impacts ain't running." You pull up to the next shop, and you hear everybody working. He's like, "This is a flat rate shop."
So that's pretty interesting.
That is funny. We have people are obviously really interested in that concept. So a couple of the questions have centered around you're then aligning incentives for that mechanic and yourselves, which is good. You're also to the extent that mechanic can get better and more efficient, everyone's going to do better. So can you talk a little bit about your approach to training? And very specifically, one question was around who finances the training. Do you guys pay for and provide training? Talk a little bit about your approach there.
The company absorbs that cost. That's the cost of doing business, training your people. But we get the first week, we trying to gauge that mechanic skill set and see if it's worth putting that money into training the mechanic.
2 of our top technicians that we have were chefs at restaurants that came to work for us.
That is awesome.
And it's kind of amazing because what we'll do is we'll hire somebody that has mechanical skills, but they're not like a full-fledged Class 8 mechanic. And then we have 5 or 6 senior guys. We'll put that person, whoever it is that we hire, in training. We'll put them with that mechanic, with the senior mechanic. And he'll go over and he'll hook up a diagnostic laptop, and he'll run a forced regen on the Cummins and show them how to work the laptop. He'll do a clutch job. He'll do it with the gentleman that's doing the training. Brake jobs. We send every technician that we have through brake training. They get them certified. So every person that we got doing brakes or anything brake related is certified. Our welders, when we hire a welder, the guy can say he can weld. If you ask every mechanic out there, everyone will tell you they can weld.
I can weld.
But there's welders and there's truly welders.
Yeah.
So we have probably one of the highest skilled welders in the nation that works for us. He used to do oil filled, deep sea, stainless steel, 10,000 feet down in the bottom of the ocean. And he would travel around the world doing it. So when we hire a welder, we'll put him with them, and he oversees them to make sure and that they know what they're doing. So when it comes down to training, people tell me sometimes, I don't hire somebody because he's not got the qualifications or he's not got the certification. When I interview a mechanic, I do it a lot different than most people do because I ask them questions that will throw them off. Hey, if you got an electrical outlet in your kitchen that goes out, what do you do? And they'll look at me and they'll scratch their head. Well, I call an electrician. That's the mechanic that I don't hire. The guy that I hire is I watch a YouTube video and I change that electrical outlet. That's the guys that I want, guys that figure out the obstacle. I've got guys that come to work for us and you'll be like, hey, I've got this piece of equipment. I need you to go out there and look at it. It ain't working. And they'll say, well, I'm not trained in that. If you're a mechanic, figure it out. If the thing won't start and it's a diesel engine, come back and tell me what the problem is with it.
Yeah. Mechanic is like MacGyver. You just got to start figuring it out. You got a toolbox, you got your skills in your hands, go get it.
So I think that the problem with a lot of people is we've got, like I said, 2 of our top technicians, 2 of our top performer technicians that we had. They've been with us for 7, 8 years now.
Right.
And in that 7 or 8 years, you talk to them about the past. And it's incredible, the journey that they've had. And they've actually got on-site, on-hands training. And those 2 guys I can send a mechanic that is a kid out of high school that changed oil at Walmart. And in 2 years, I can say, go out there and do an end frame on this 855 Cummins. And there's no questions.
Wow.
And the quality works there. So, turning down technicians because when they come into your shop and saying, I'm not qualified or they're not qualified, give some people the opportunity. Because if you have a senior technician working with them, now one thing that we do a little bit different at most of our shops, and I started this when I was working at Penske Truck Leasing. Pedro Segares was my service manager at the location, and I went in there and I basically was the maintenance supervisor. At Penske, they have technicians that would come up, and you just give them a job, the next job, no matter what it was. Every mechanic has their strong points and has their weak points. You got mechanics that can do a clutch job in a Class 8 truck in 4 hours, and you got technicians that'll take 16 hours. So do you want to give a technician a job that's going to take 16 hours to give to the guy that's going to do it in 4 hours? So what we do is our senior technicians on site, they'll go out and diagnose the piece of equipment. And the guy that they give the work to, he may not be the fastest guy at it, but he's going to get better. We know the truck's diagnosed right. He can go out there and say, hey, take this water pump off and replace it. A lot of shops will be like, hey, I got this truck here, it's overheating. And they give it to a kid that's done PMs for the last 2 years. It's going to take them 10 times as long to figure out, 10 times longer to diagnose it. And then when that technician that done the job, the senior technician will go up and say, hey, let's go look at your work. Hey, the water pump's good, not overheating, there's no leaks, good job. So, I mean, when it comes down to technicians and training, I think we do it a little bit different.
And it sounds like, and I've heard you say this before, one of the strengths of AMPM is the technicians that you have.
Exactly.
And people struggle, I think it might be getting slightly better, but struggle to hire and struggle to retain. Beyond just the compensation, is there anything else that you're doing that you think really, really drives people to want to apply and then come work with you?
Well, I think what a lot of people enjoy is if you like to travel with us, you'll be around the country. Even if you got family at home, it's not all the time you're traveling, but you get the opportunity. We'll tell the mechanics, hey, we have a big project coming up in North Dakota. It's about 2 or 3 weeks. It could be longer. Do you want to go up there? And then a lot of them, yeah, I'll go. I've never been to North Dakota. They'll be up there for a month, 2 months, come back home, on their days off. But they really get to travel and also see the different dynamics of how different shops work. And then see how those other mechanics are working. What is making them more efficient? What kind of tools are they using? Is there a newer tool out this other mechanic's using that split up his job 20, 30 minutes? It kind of allows all the mechanics to just meet everybody. And then also can see if they want to potentially move to another shop. They have that opportunity. Like, hey, I really like it in Colorado. I really like that shop. I'm thinking about moving there. There's enough work there for me. So there's a really good work-life balance, but also I think majority of it comes down to just how much money you can make. And you have that upon yourself because we had guarantee work. So it's all up to them about how much money they want to make. In a sense, they're writing their own paycheck in a sense because there's so much work there. And if the work does get slow, he's like, hey, I'm ready to go to the next shop. Or I think I'm ready to go to one of the larger shops. And then, of course, from that, there's percentages that we increase for the flat rate. So you can make even more money. The more efficient you get, of course, we want to compensate that. We want to keep our mechanics.
So the flat rate moves kind of like an hourly,
skill
where
level.
as I get skills or I'm just delivering, there's no comebacks. I'm holding this efficiency. You go pat me on the back with a new comp plan that says, hey, keep doing what you're doing. You just make more money.
I think one of the things that really motivate every one of our shops and locations is every one of our shop has a mechanic that the senior technician makes anywhere at a low ball, $4,000 a week, at a high ball, $10,000 to $12,000 a week as a mechanic.
Wow.
So when you have these other mechanics that's working with these mechanics making the money, they want to make that money.
Right.
And
That's
when they
another
see
level.
how they can make the money, because sometimes we'll go into a shop and we open one up in a town, and everybody in that town, you can't hire a flat rate mechanic. They won't do it. They just refuse. Hey, I'm working here. I'm making $18 an hour or $40 an hour. They don't want the opportunity. They don't want to hear it. I'm not working flat rate, period. Then we'll send technicians out of Houston or out of another location that's a flat rate mechanic, and they go up there and they'll start working on the equipment, and then we'll hire in a couple of the hourly mechanics and say, hey, we'll give you a guarantee starting off, making more money than you're making at this shop right now as a guarantee. In 90 days, if you're not making minimum of 70 hours a week, we're going to have another chat. And those mechanics usually come back to me in 90 days and say, there's no way in the world I will ever work hourly again. I was crazy. I mean, I've got technicians that's been technicians for 25 years that are working for us right now, and they're just like, there's no way in the world I'd go back to work hourly. And, if you think about the numbers, if you get a guy on an 8-hour day, let's say a brake job on a Class 8, 6.8 hours, and he does that 6.8 hours, and then he pulls in a truck and he does an oil change. That's another 4.5 hours. At the end of the day, it's all the revenue. He's made your business. And that same technician that's working commission for me would have done 6 brake jobs and that oil change.
Right.
The customer is more happy because they got 50 trucks on the deadline that they all need up by the end of the week. They don't care how the truck gets fixed. They want it fixed as fast as possible because when the wheels ain't turning, they're not earning.
Yeah.
So do you ever have any issues with different states and their labor laws and how you pay?
West Virginia?
Yeah, but we utilize a PEO.
I assume you don't have California then?
No, but we utilize a PEO. They handle all of our risk compliance.
Okay.
And so we don't have to deal with the headache of going through the different labor laws. They tell us where we need to be at. But within our comp plan, it allows us that flexibility. And, so it makes it easier. We all of our payroll is outsourced.
Yeah, that's one thing I should say is we really don't have any employees. Even myself, I'm paid through a PPO, and I get I get the best health insurance. I get dental insurance, 401k, profit sharing, and everything, just like a huge business does.
Right, and then do our recruiting. They have a great recruiting department. We do our own recruiting too, but we also leverage some of theirs. Definitely for our upper management and service managers.
Because you're not trying to like just go staff and hire and shoulder that burden. You're here to turn wrenches.
Right. And
exactly.
then from the risk side, the
contracts.
HR, and we deal with all these different personalities, different states. My HR person would have a really hard time. So having a PEO that handles all that for us, we just tell them, hey, we're hiring this person. This is what the rates are.
This is where they live.
Work out the numbers, what we need to be at, so make sure we're within compliance. But they shoulder all that burden for us.
But we've never had a situation where we got out of compliance because of the hours worked versus the minimum wage balance. Because I'll be quite honest with you, we've got shirts made up and it says if you want to earn $85,000 a year guaranteed, call us. Because that's basically, if you can't make $85,000 a year as a mechanic for AM PM diesel services, to be blunt, you're either lazy or you don't want to work. Period, or you can't work. Because if you're a worker, we have technicians that come to us when we hire in a new guy. They'll be like, so how's this commission work? Am I going to like it? And he goes, we got one guy who tells the other guys, the other mechanics who get hired, he goes, can you imagine wanting to double your car payment, but you can't afford to do it? At AM PM, you just stay 2 hours late and do that next job, and you can make a car payment every single day.
That is great. And just in the interest of time, I want to move on. There's a couple of topics around inventory and other things. You want to ask one more around
just
this?
one thing. You had mentioned earlier there's a chef, a couple guys that are chef. I was talking to somebody who's struggling to hire mechanics, and then they were pulling the mechanics off the floor, and they were trying to turn them into these people. Mm-hmm. Oh, you're no longer going to turn wrenches. You're going to run the office. You're going to do this invoice. And then they started having issues where they're not proficient at being the parts master, and they're not proficient at being perfect at invoicing. And I told him a story about somebody we had hired that was a bartender, and she's the kind of gal that she would walk up to the table, write nothing down, take the order for the whole table, come back and be like spot on, whether it be crazy drink makes, whatever it is. So is it really the outcome you're looking for? And should you be hiring for that? And instead of like pulling mechanics off the floor, should you like consider other people and other skill sets? And then kind of like what you've said is you're just changing the narrative that we have in the industry, giving people opportunities and getting these high-end professionals and getting them to help build you a team through opportunity and good comps.
I would never have a mechanic go into the corporate office and start that. Mechanics are the bread and butter for the business in a sense. The only time that I would promote, we do quite often, is a lead mechanic to being a service manager.
Yeah.
Because talking to the customers, you need to be proficient and knowledgeable from the start to the finish of the truck. They need to believe that you know everything about that truck. On the corporate side, I don't think any of them really want to sit behind a desk all day. They want to still be turning wrenches somehow, right? But from a lead mechanic being a service manager, I think that is the key to any shop. You got to have somebody that was in the shoes of the mechanic, so they understand what they're going through. Because there's sometimes a big disconnect from a corporate or versus what happens out in the shop. I always tell people at corporate that our job is to support them out in the field. So however we can make their job easier, that is what we're going to do. If they need more training or they need more help, that is our whole job. We're not on the we call it the top of the totem pole or a king sharing like that. We are there to help out the mechanics and the service managers, parts managers, and how we can make their job easier and more efficient. The more efficient the mechanic is, that's the better off the business is, happier my customer's going to be.
Yeah, you'd be better to pull in a PM guy into the shop, a young guy if you're looking for somebody to do paperwork or somebody to do something like that. Never pull a prime technician, because that's your revenue center.
Yeah.
You need the revenue centers making your revenue. You can get anybody to do invoicing.
Or what we do is, if you want to move up, be a service manager, district manager, or regional manager, or something like that, you have to find a replacement, and you have to have them trained. But now, when you do take that new position, you're next on the line for the guy you just replaced. Make sure he's doing his job the way he's supposed to be. And that usually so far has worked out beautifully for all of us. The guy feels like he's getting all the help he needs from the previous guy, and I get peace of mind knowing that I don't have a hold in the company in that certain area. But if you want to move up, you got to find your replacement. And so far, I love that. I'm going to continue to keep promoting within. That is the secret sauce there, is finding that. And then and giving them the power to negotiate some of them, the onboarding side. Give them a certain threshold, what we can negotiate for you, starting out percentage to come on with AMPM. And then, of course, a probational period, 90 days, this is what your rate's going to be. Sooner, but it could be 90 days. We will renegotiate your comp package. And usually we know sooner, because mechanics, within 2 or 3 weeks if they're a good mechanic or not. Usually it doesn't go out to 90 days.
And one thing I'd like to say real fast about the flat rate mechanics is to give people that's an hourly shop, if they're interested in switching over from hourly to a commission shop, flat rate shop, the general rule of thumb is, if it's a green mechanic, somebody that doesn't have very much experience, 25% of the gross revenue. And then if they're a little bit better, you can go up. But the highest you ever want to go on percentage is 36%. If you do the math on your labor rate, what you're charging the customer, 36%, that's the top you ever want to pay. If you need to increase that, you need to increase your revenue coming in, or increase your hourly rate for the shop to get it up where the technician needs to be at.
That is the secret sauce too, right there. People miss that. That is key, or you'll screw the whole thing up.
And when you're doing the transition and I've actually went into customer shops that have their own mechanics as well, and we usually hire their mechanics, or some of their mechanics they want to keep for another one of their shops, and they're paying them hourly, and we do a transition to help them to go to flat rate. Is you can give them a guarantee for 90 days for the transition period to take place. And you never want the transition pay that you're giving them to be what they're making by the hourly. Because if you got a guy making $800 a week, I'm just throwing a number out there, you don't want to give his guarantee of $800, because then he's stuck. You'd want to give a guarantee of $500. Right. That way you give him an initiative to make that extra $300, because once after he goes to that step, he's going to want to make $1,200, right. And then when he makes $1,200, he's going to want to make $1,500.
Right. Yeah, and don't get the farm away, pretty much.
Once after he gets in that routine of how everything works, like I said, I don't have any technician works for me that wishes he was hourly.
And you're in multiple states, so this isn't like just one little state.
We're on the East Coast.
No, I think that's a great. It's a great topic. There's a lot of interest in it, right? Because it is, it can be a differentiator, and not just for recruiting and retaining talent, but or not just for recruiting, but for retaining talent. Like, people want opportunity to make more money, and it's a great way to give it.
You have to have a really good recruiter to explain it the right way. Because people get really confused when we talk about, so we call it commission, flat rate, flag time. Those are all interchangeable in a sense. But you got to make sure that recruiter or hiring manager is really explaining it, and make sure the candidate really understands the pay. Yeah. We get a lot of questions about that. They really get sometimes confused. And so we have a SOP for that, so make sure it's being explained how it's intended to be explained, and not so complicated. We do examples and live demos so they really understand where the pay is coming from, and real world examples. And of course, they can talk to our mechanics. They'll all vouch for us, how the pay works. And we pay weekly. We don't do bi-weekly. That's also a benefit, paying every single week.
Just as we talked about beforehand, we could get to talking about this and just keep going forever. It's really interesting. Let's touch on 2 other topics, though, before we run out of time. Prior to the webinar, we had a lot of questions come in just around inventory in general. Can you talk about the approach that AMPM takes to managing inventory? People give the extreme examples of, do you shut the shop down for a day? Do you do it on a Saturday? How do you guys handle that, and what's your experience been?
Yeah, that's actually the reason why we got Fullbay, because our inventory controls back years and years ago.
That was not a setup question.
It was not. It wasn't. But So what we found that is the most beneficial, we don't shut down the shop because our shops are running PM 24 hours, right? But it's doing weekly cycle counts, leveraging only counting certain sections of your inventory and following that protocol. So you keep, today I'm going to count shelf A1, tomorrow I'm going to count B2, kind of keep working your way through it. So time you're done, you've already done a cycle count. And by that time, you have put hands on all the inventory. So when it comes down to the month-end close, by the third or fifth day, you should be able to go through your inventory pretty quickly and make sure it's all reconciled. And then counting can take over and reconcile that inventory. I also put a limit for how much inventory we can have at all of our shops. I don't want my shops carrying $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 in inventory. Definitely for us, majority of my shops are close by part houses.
Never do consignments.
And we have national pricing. And due to all of our shops, we can piggyback off their other inventories. So versus ordering a whole bunch more DEF, and their shop might have more DEF fluid on there. We can ship to the other shop. But the key to that is having a threshold of how much inventory you want to keep. And then your bonus structure for that service manager, district manager, and directors is they're meeting those thresholds every quarter. They get their stipend from that. That's their bonus off the profitability of that shop. And it really comes down to that inventory controls. And how we manage that even further, any type of inventory shrinkage or loss, that counts against the bonus, this percentage off of that. So we were incentivizing all the mechanics, the service managers, directors, ensuring they're following that to the T, because they don't want to lose out money. They don't want the company to hurt or lose out $1,000 part. We don't, something different, some shops probably do, they shouldn't be doing, some of my customers do this at first, is stocking non-maintenance items. We don't stock starters. We don't stock alternators. We don't stock radiators, water pumps. We stock maintenance items. Unless there is a big need, you're blowing radiators, there's no reason to have 2 or 3 on the shelf. It's all maintenance items that we stock in our shops. I never want to see
flow. Your flow. Stuff's moving through your shop.
Exactly.
You don't have inventory.
You don't want to sell inventory because then you have to deal about how you're going to resell this, and you usually can't return it to the vendor, or it's missing the box, or you forget you have it. The whole goal behind your inventory is to have the less line items in your inventory, less individual parts. And then the organization of those parts go, depending upon how big your parts room is, they can go missing pretty quick. Believe it or not, a little thing this big could be $120. It could be 6 of those.
One sensor.
So there's a big range. And so I don't like to see any of my shops having an excess inventory or parts that we shouldn't stock. And we don't allow them to add parts to the inventory. It has to come from corporate, get corporate approval. Like, I want to start stocking EGR valves for all the pizza we have for our customer. Then we'll do a min max, and we'll see if we want to do that, or I'll tell them flat out we're not doing it, because we can pick up this part, we can get it within 24 hours. The customer is fine with us waiting on that, and our customers understand that we're not going to stock every single part. They'll wait 24 hours for it. Sometimes we can get a lot faster, obviously, but the key to that is maintenance items only and limiting these hot, really expensive parts.
And basically keep your mechanics out of your parts room. And then the other thing that you need to do is make sure you don't have anybody doing parts on consignment.
Yeah,
a couple of the local vendors, they like to come in. They're like, hey, we can do your lights, we can do your fuses, your wiper blades, and we'll monitor the inventory, and they'll tell you, hey, how many of these you want to keep, how many of these you want to keep. Well, basically that salesperson's coming in, they're getting paid commission off their sales at the end of the month. And you may say you want 10 wiper blades. You go in there on the first and you got 25 wiper blades. And their excuse is, oh, just send them back and we can do a credit. Those people are a nightmare for inventory. Keep them out of your parts room.
So what about like nuts and bolts? Will you let that be consigned, or I guess that's not consigned. You're just buying, getting invoiced when they restock your bins?
We buy those in bulk.
It's miscellaneous shop supplies is how we put that. We don't bill out bolts and nuts as individual, and unless they're like big bolt.
Yeah, unless there's a variance of a certain dollar amount, that's bill them out individually. If not, miscellaneous covers most of it. But I told all my advisors that everything gets billed out. And use common sense, right? It's not going to bill out you one butt connector, right?
Yeah.
But it's over, $1.75. Okay, we probably want to start billing those out.
So you're the second person I run to who's been burned by consignment in some form, or the person shows up and somebody's done a mispick, grabbed the wrong part, and they don't care, or the part's just gone, or the count is wrong, or they wrote it down, or something happens where next thing you know, you have this liability out there. you're like, I never sold the part. Never was installed on a truck I own. And yeah.
When we get really successful as a business, I could say is when we sign up for interstate billing services. And the reason why we sign up for interstate billing services is not only to get our invoices factored from our customers. At one point, we quit doing that completely because we didn't need IBS, but we still needed to be able to pay our vendors.
Right.
If you're not using interstate billing services, I would recommend, I'm not trying to give a plug for them, but one thing you can do is it's already set up in Fullbay. Number two, when you call and order parts, you need to make sure that vendor's using Fullbay for the part purchasing side of it. So you can put the PO number in there so it's tracked. That way, when you get your statement from Interstate Billing Services, the PO from Fullbay is right there that's linked to the invoice.
That's want to correct something. So IBS has two sides of their business. They have the purchasing receivables or the parts purchasing side. Two different accounts.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of, in our industry, IBS accepts it at majority of large dealerships.
I'd say probably 99% of them.
And they give you, for all of us, each one of our accounts had a different IBS account number. And so it's easier to manage and reconcile for your back office and the finance. For reconciling those, make sure invoices are being paid on time. If you're missing an invoice copy, everybody knows it's a pain to call a vendor and get an invoice copy. They'll say, I'm sending it to you, and you'll get it 2 or 3 weeks later. That doesn't work for us. Our goal is to invoice as fast as possible.
So at one point, we had multiple accounts opened up, across the nation for different vendors, and it was in-house accounts. Basically, we was paying them. Well, the problem that would run into at the end of the month when you get your statement, you'd see a starter for a Cayman GTS. We're like, we're a truck shop. Why do we got a car starter? Well, yeah, you purchased it. No.
Just got
Send
put
us
on
a
your
signature.
tab,
Send us. But, if you're not micromanaging your vendors, we would have paid $347 for that starter.
Yeah.
When it goes through Interstate Billing Services, you can look right at it and you can compare it to the statements with your POs, with Fullbay, with the invoices. Simplifies it.
You only pay the ones that tie to a PO, that tie to a service order at the end, and you'd short pay the bill the rest. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Makes
One
sense.
other question for you before we start to wrap up. AMPM obviously has grown into a very successful large business. There's a number of people who are watching or who will watch this who have very small businesses that they want to grow. So if you could go back and think about when you were just starting out or when you were smaller, anything that you're doing today that you think you could modify and do in a smaller shop? Or do you think that it applies just directly that you can do all this when you're a little on the smaller side?
Well, I would say on the smaller side, when you're going out and meeting with the bigger customers, customers that have 100 pieces of equipment or more, it's critical to get a lawyer to do you up a generic MSA. That way, everybody understands what the agreement is. You will have a better long-term relationship with that customer and continue to grow with them. Versus a handshake, hey, here's my labor rate, here's my parts markup. MSAs are really, really, really crucial. On the smaller side of the businesses, if you're not signed up for, NTTS breakdown, fleet down, truck down, get signed up for all those. I think one of the biggest growth potentials that we had as a small business growing is actually going after the big fleets. If you don't go out there and ask for the work, you're never going to get to work.
Interesting.
And I would say another thing for small businesses that started off our success is when a truck comes in our parking lot, we may have 40 trucks out there waiting to be worked on, but have your top tech go out there and hook the computer up to it, do a diagnostics, and at least put that phone call in so you can tell the customer what's going on with that truck. I think one of trucking companies' biggest pet peeves on the dispatch side is, I've got a truck at Joe's repair shop, and it's been sitting out in the parking lot for 2 weeks, and I still don't know what's going on with it. At least they know what's going on with that truck immediately.
Can I run it? Is it safe? I keep it under, if I keep it in this range, am I good? We used to do that with our mechanic shop. I needed to, because you'd have some stuff going on, and just say, hey, keep it close. Oh, okay, cool. So there's nothing safe, keep it close. All right, got it.
At least have your senior technician go out there and just look at it, because it may be something that they can run the truck, and you have to order the part. It may be a week before the part gets in, and it can continue to run the truck until it comes in versus us sitting in a parking lot.
Right.
Because our slogan for a long time is, if you're not turning, you're not earning.
Yeah, that's true.
Keep the
Very
trucks
true.
running on the road.
On both sides, customer and you. Right?
Exactly.
Right.
All right. Well, guys, I think we've run out of our time. Even though we started a little late, we ran a little late. Thank you guys very much for joining us. It was great to see you and appreciate the time. Chris,
Absolutely.
Thanks for sitting in as well. So a couple of things. Obviously, we didn't get to all the questions. There's so many from prior to the webinar, plus the ones that came in. When you think about potentially coming to the Diesel Connect conference, I think you guys are going to join us here in Phoenix in a couple of months. Yep. And we'll have a number of other customers, to stand up and talk about some of their experiences. But these are the kind of questions that you've been submitting that you'll be able to talk through, with your peers in the industry. So it's not a user conference just to talk about Fullbay. It's about really getting the industry together to talk about best practices like these. So really appreciate everybody joining. Anything you want to finish up with?
See, are you interested in scheduling a Fullbay, a demonstration of Fullbay? There's a survey here. If you're not a customer, and you can go ahead and fill that out. We'll obviously submit that over to our sales team and have them reach out to you. They're very proficient at listening to your needs and demonstrating how the product can help you. Otherwise, I believe we have another slide. Yeah, we have our Fullbay Payments product. The fleet payments has been added to that. So a lot of you have been asking for us to add ACH. That's done. Fleet payments is done. And we're working on some other tooling. It's a pretty cool product to do monthly settlements and handle just viewing transactions compared to the previous system that we were using. So at any rate, it is an upgrade. We're still developing on it. And if you're processing any type of payment in your shop, which most of you are, I encourage you to look into that. We have a staff that can help train you and show you how it works.
Works in Canada now too, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. It works in Canada. That just launched just a few weeks ago. That's a good point.
All right. Well, thanks again, everybody. Chase, Dale, thanks again.
guys.
We really appreciate it.